The plasma bolt missed Captain Jake Morrison's head by inches, scorching the wall behind him. He dove behind a twisted metal beam as 3 more shots tore through the smoke-filled corridor. The colony was burning. New Helena had been home to 40,000 humans just 6 hours ago. Now it was a graveyard. Jake's communicator crackled with static and screams. He forced himself to focus, checking his rifle's charge. 70%. Enough to make these alien bastards pay for what they'd done. The Vraxel had come without warning, their fleet materializing in orbit like death itself. No demands, no communication, just extermination. He'd watch families incinerated in the streets, children turned to ash in their mother's arms. The orbital bombardment had been methodical, surgical, designed to leave no survivors. But the Vraxel had made one mistake. They'd assumed all humans were soft colonists. They'd forgotten about the Marine garrison. Lieutenant Amy Carter appeared beside him, her face streaked with soot and blood. Not her blood. She'd killed 7 Vraxel in hand-to-hand combat when her ammunition ran out. Jake had seen the bodies. The aliens were 7 feet tall with 4 arms and natural armor plating. Amy had torn them apart anyway. The civilians? Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Gone. All of them. We found maybe 200 survivors in the underground shelters. That's it, Captain. 200 out of 40,000. Jake's jaw tightened. The Vraxel war forms were moving through the ruins now, hunting down the last humans with thermal scanners. They were efficient killers. They'd done this before, Jake realized. This wasn't war. This was genocide. They were exterminating humanity one colony at a time. A Vraxel warrior rounded the corner, its forearms clutching plasma weapons. Jake didn't hesitate. 3 shots, center mass, 2 through the skull. The alien collapsed, purple blood pooling beneath its corpse. Amy was already moving, securing the corridor ahead. Jake's communicator buzzed with an emergency broadcast. Admiral Lisa Chen's voice cut through the static, transmitting on all human frequencies across known space. What she said next would change everything. Attention all human forces. New Helena has been destroyed. Proxima Station has been destroyed. Terra Nova has been destroyed. Total human casualties estimated at 200 million souls in the past 8 hours. The Vraxel sovereignty has initiated systematic genocide against humanity. By authority of the Earth Defense Council and the Outer Colonies Assembly, I am hereby declaring Total War Protocol Omega. All restrictions on military technology are lifted. All prohibited weapons systems are authorized for immediate deployment. All human forces are ordered to engage and destroy Vraxel assets without mercy or quarter. No prisoners. No negotiation, no surrender. They wanted to erase us from existence. We're going to show them why that was a mistake. Chen, out. Jake looked at Amy. Her eyes reflected the same cold fury he felt burning in his chest. The Vraxel had tried to exterminate humanity quietly, efficiently, before Earth's government could mount a response. They'd calculated that eliminating the outer colonies would cripple human expansion and leave Earth isolated and terrified. They'd miscalculated badly. The Vraxel had studied human history. They knew humans fought each other constantly. They'd assumed humans were fractured, weak, unable to unite against an external threat. They'd watched humanity's endless wars and concluded we were primitive savages who would crumble under overwhelming force. They were right about one thing. Humans were savage. But they'd missed the crucial detail. Humans reserved their true savagery for those who threatened humanity itself. Every war, every conflict, every drop of blood humans had spilled throughout history had taught them one thing perfectly. How to Wage Total War. The Vraxil were about to receive an education they would never forget. Part 2. The Earth Defense Fleet materialized out of quantum space like avenging angels. 50 dreadnoughts, 300 cruisers, 1,000 smaller vessels, and leading them was the Ark Royal, Admiral Chen's flagship, bristling with weapons the Vraxil had never seen before because humanity had banned them decades ago as too dangerous for civilized warfare. Civilized warfare was over. Commander Paul Davis stood on the bridge of the Ark Royal watching the tactical display light up with enemy contacts. The Vraxil fleet guarding their forward staging area outnumbered the human forces 3-1. Standard doctrine said to retreat, regroup, and engage with better odds. Admiral Chen had thrown standard doctrine out the airlock. All ships, Chen's voice rang across the fleet channel. You know what they did. You've seen the footage from New Helena. They murdered our families. They killed our children. They tried to wipe us out because they thought we were weak. Show them what humanity does to genocidal aliens. Fire everything. The space between the fleets erupted in fury. Human railguns hurled tungsten slugs at fractional light speed, impacting Vraxil shields with the force of small nuclear weapons. Missile pods launched thousand-strong swarms of smart munitions that twisted through space in complex patterns, overwhelming enemy point defense. And then the prohibited weapons came online. Paul watched as the Valkyrie unleashed its quantum disruptor, a weapon that had been mothballed after it was used once in the human corporate wars. The device created a cascading quantum collapse in a spherical area of space. Matter didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist at the quantum level. 15 Vraxil ships vanished from reality, leaving behind empty void where they'd been seconds before. The Vraxil fleet commander tried to respond, but humanity had learned from every war it had ever fought. Human ships used quantum encryption the Vraxil couldn't crack. Human tactics adapted and evolved in real time using combat AI that had been trained on 10,000 years of human warfare. The Vraxil were advanced. They were powerful. But they'd never faced an enemy like this. Captain Nina Foster commanded the destroyer pack on the fleet's left flank. Her 6 ships moved in perfect coordination, a tactic adapted from Wolfpack submarine warfare from Earth's 20th century. The Vraxil had better shields and heavier armor, but human ships were faster, more maneuverable. Nina's destroyers darted in, unleashed devastating close-range attacks, and vanished before the Vraxil could target them effectively. "Target the carrier," Nina ordered. The Vraxil carrier was launching fighter craft by the hundreds. Each fighter was piloted by a living Vraxil warrior, their culture considering automated fighters dishonorable. Humans had no such qualms. The destroyer pack released their own fighters, small automated drones controlled by tactical AI that didn't care about honor or glory. They just killed efficiently. The carrier tried to turn, bringing its main guns to bear, but Nina's destroyers were already in its blind spot. 6 ships fired as one, their concentrated fire punching through shields and armor. The carrier's reactor went critical, and the explosion took out 3 nearby Vraxil cruisers in a chain reaction of destruction. Back on the Ark Royal, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The Vraxil were good fighters. Their technology was impressive. Their warriors were brave. It didn't matter. Humanity had spent its entire existence fighting. Every innovation, every advancement in human civilization had been driven by the need to wage war more effectively. Agriculture let humans feed armies. Industry let humans build weapons. Science gave humans the knowledge to destroy on unimaginable scales. The Vraxil had encountered dozens of species in their expansion across the galaxy. They'd conquered most of them. A few had resisted and been destroyed. They developed a doctrine of overwhelming force combined with total extermination of resistant species. It had worked perfectly for centuries. They'd never encountered a species where every single member was descended from survivors of countless wars, plagues, famines, and disasters. They'd never fought an enemy where the instinct for survival was coded into every strand of genetic material. They'd never faced a species that had literally evolved to wage war. "Admiral, their command ship is breaking formation," Paul reported. The Vaxil flagship was trying to retreat, its commander finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. Chen smiled without humor. "Track it. I want that ship intact. We're going to make sure every Vraxil in the galaxy knows what happened here." The Ark Royal's tractor beams, powered by the same quantum technology that made faster-than-light travel possible, reached out across thousands of kilometers. The Vraxil flagship's shields held for 3 seconds before collapsing under the sheer power being directed at them. The massive alien vessel was dragged through space like a fish on a line. Marine boarding pods launched from the Ark Royal's flanks. Each pod carried 20 Marines in powered armor, veterans who'd been fighting the Vraxil for the past 12 hours with nothing but rage and determination. Now they had proper equipment and authorization to use every dirty trick humanity had ever developed. Sergeant Kyle Murphy led the first pod through the Vraxil flagship's hull. The boarding charges blew a hole 3 meters wide, and the Marines poured through into a corridor filled with surprised Vraxil warriors. Kyle's plasma rifle fired in sustained bursts, cutting down aliens who'd been expecting to hunt helpless human colonists, not face-trained soldiers in military-grade armor. The Vraxil fought back viciously. Their forearms made them formidable close-quarters combatants, and their natural armor could shrug off small arms fire. But human-powered armor amplified strength to superhuman levels, and the Marines had trained for exactly this scenario. Kyle blocked a Vraxil's blade arm with his forearm shield, drove his combat knife through the alien's throat with his other hand, and moved on to the next target without breaking stride. The Marines cleared deck after deck with brutal efficiency. They'd learned the Vraxil ship layouts from captured data. They knew where the Vraxil would be most vulnerable, and they had orders to capture the command crew alive. The rest were legitimate targets, and the Marines showed them no mercy. Commander Vraxil 7 stood on his flagship's bridge, watching his fleet die on the tactical displays. The humans were everywhere, their ships darting through his formations like predators among prey. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The intelligence reports had said humans were disorganized, fractious, unable to coordinate large-scale military operations without months of preparation. The intelligence reports had been catastrophically wrong. The bridge doors exploded inward. Human soldiers in gleaming armor stormed through, their weapons tracking every Vraxil on the bridge with mechanical precision. Vraxil 7 reached for his sidearm, but a human soldier was already there, moving faster than should be possible, tearing the weapon from his hands and forcing him to the deck. Sergeant Kyle Murphy's helmet retracted, revealing a human face twisted with controlled fury. He leaned close to Vraxil 7, speaking in perfectly translated Vraxil. "Your people made a mistake. You thought killing millions of us would make humanity afraid. You thought genocide would break our spirit. Instead, you just taught us that you're too dangerous to exist. We're taking you back to Earth. You're going to stand trial. And then the galaxy is going to watch what happens when you try to exterminate humanity? Consider this your only warning. We're coming for all of you." Part 3, The Trial of Commander Vraxil 7, lasted 3 days and was broadcast across every communication network in known space. The Galactic Assembly, an ancient coalition of 18 sentient species, watched in stunned silence as humanity presented evidence of systematic genocide. Recordings from New Helena showed Vaxxil ships targeting civilian shelters. Data from destroyed colonies revealed calculated extermination protocols. Testimony from the 200 survivors painted a picture of deliberate, premeditated mass murder. Ambassador Daniel Wright stood before the assembly, his voice carrying the cold weight of humanity's fury. He was flanked by holographic displays showing the faces of the dead. 40,000 from New Helena, 80 million from Proxima Station, 120 million from Terra Nova. The numbers scrolled endlessly, each one representing a human life snuffed out by Vaxxil weapons. The Vaxxil sovereignty stands accused of genocide, Daniel announced. Not in the heat of battle, not as collateral damage in warfare, but as deliberate policy. They sought to erase humanity from existence. They failed. Now we demand justice, and we demand answers. Why did you do this? Vaxxil 7 stood in the defendant's chamber, his forearms bound with quantum shackles, and the Vaxxil commander had maintained silence for 2 days. But humanity's evidence was overwhelming. Finally, he spoke. You were a threat. Your species expands too quickly, adapts too fast. You wage war with an intensity that frightens every civilized species. We examined your history, the wars, the weapons, the willingness to destroy yourselves just to defeat an enemy. We calculated that humanity would eventually threaten the entire galaxy. We acted to prevent a future catastrophe. Daniel's expression didn't change. You committed genocide because you were afraid of what we might become? You murdered 200 million innocent civilians because you didn't like our history? Yes, Vaxxil 7 said simply. And we were right to be afraid. Look at what you've done to our fleet in just 3 days. 60% casualties. 12 colonies burned in retaliation. You've proven exactly why humanity must be contained. The assembly chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 18 species argued and shouted, their translators creating a cacophony of alien languages. The Zephrani delegate, a crystalline being who communicated through light pulses, demanded humanity be sanctioned for excessive force. The Corfin representative, a species that resemble bipedal lizards, countered that the Vaxxil had violated the most fundamental laws of galactic civilization. Daniel waited for silence, then spoke again. The Vaxxil burned 12 of our colonies because we wouldn't surrender to extermination. We burned 12 of theirs in response. They started this war. They chose genocide. We chose survival, and now we're choosing justice. Admiral Chen had spent the past 72 hours coordinating the largest military operation in human history. The Earth Defense Fleet had been reinforced by ships from every human colony, every corporate fleet, every private militia that could mount weapons on a hull. 2,000 vessels strong, the fleet was gathering at the edge of Vaxxil space. But Chen wasn't planning an invasion. She was planning something far more devastating. Dr. Helen Grant stood in the medical bay of the Ark Royal, staring at a sample of Vaxxil biology under a quantum microscope. She'd been studying captured Vaxxil warriors for weeks, analyzing their physiology, their genetics, their biochemistry. What she'd discovered had given Admiral Chen a weapon more terrifying than any bomb. It'll work, Helen confirmed over the secure channel. The Vaxxil immune system has a critical vulnerability. They evolved on a low-radiation world with minimal viral diversity. Their bodies never developed robust, adaptive immunity. This modified virus will spread through their population like wildfire. Chen studied the data with a troubled expression. Doctor, you're describing a biological weapon that could wipe out their entire species. Yes, Admiral. That's exactly what I'm describing. The Vraxil tried to genocide us. This is our response. One plague, delivered to their homeworld. Within 6 months, the Vraxil ceased to exist as a threat. And how many innocents would die? How many Vraxil children? How many civilians who had nothing to do with the attack on our colonies? Helen's hands trembled. All of them, that's the point. They tried to erase us, we erased them back. Admiral Chen closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 200 million human dead pressing down on her shoulders. Every instinct screamed for revenge. The Vraxil had shown no mercy. They targeted civilians deliberately. They deserved extinction. But that was the voice of rage talking, not reason. Chen had spent 30 years in the military. She'd seen war in all its horror. She knew that revenge and justice weren't the same thing. No, Chen said finally. We're not going to become monsters to punish monsters. Destroy that research, Doctor. That's an order. Helen looked relieved. Yes, Admiral. Thank you. The trial concluded with a verdict that shocked the Galactic Assembly. Vraxil 7 was found guilty of genocide and sentenced to life imprisonment. But the verdict came with something unprecedented in galactic law. The Assembly, forced to confront the reality of what the Vraxil had done, issued a species-wide sanction. The Vraxil sovereignty was banned from galactic civilization. Their territory was quarantined. Their ships were prohibited from entering neutral space. Any Vraxil vessel that crossed the quarantine boundary would be destroyed on sight by Assembly peacekeeping forces, and humanity was granted the right to enforce the quarantine personally. The Vraxil had been functionally erased from the galactic community, not through genocide, but through isolation. They would survive, but they would do so alone, cut off from trade, diplomacy, and the community of civilized species. Back on New Helena, Captain Jake Morrison walked through the ruins of what had been his home. Construction crews were already working to rebuild, but the scars would never fully heal. 200 survivors weren't enough to repopulate a colony. New Helena would become a memorial, a reminder of what had happened when someone tried to exterminate humanity. Lieutenant Amy Carter joined him, carrying a data pad with casualty lists. Final count just came in, Captain. 39,812 confirmed dead. 203 survivors, including us. Jake nodded slowly. The fleet? Total victory. We lost 86 ships, 14,000 personnel. But the Vraxil fleet is destroyed. Their forward colonies are occupied. Their homeworld is under quarantine. Admiral Chen says the war is over. Is it? Jake asked. Wars don't end with victory. They end when people stop wanting to fight. Do you think the Vraxil have stopped wanting to fight? Amy was quiet for a moment. I think they understand now that genocide was a mistake. They learned that humanity doesn't break. We just get more dangerous. Jake smiled grimly. Good. Let that be the lesson the galaxy learns. Humanity will trade with you. We'll negotiate with you. We'll cooperate and coexist peacefully. But if you try to exterminate us, we'll show you exactly why that's a bad idea. Not through genocide, not through extermination, but through absolute, overwhelming, undeniable demonstration of force. The Vraxil had wanted to eliminate humanity before it became too powerful. Instead, they'd forced humanity to reveal just how powerful it already was. The fleet that had shattered their armada. The technology that had been kept locked away for decades. The unity that had formed when billions of humans realized their species faced extinction. The galaxy had seen humanity at war, and the galaxy was terrified. Part 4. 6 months after the trial, humanity stood at a crossroads. The quarantine of Vraxil space held firm, enforced by both the Galactic Assembly peacekeeping fleet and human warships that patrolled the border with relentless efficiency. But victory in war had created unexpected complications in peace. Governor Linda Hayes administered the rebuilt colony of New Helena from a prefabricated command center overlooking the Memorial Gardens. 20,000 new colonists had arrived from Earth, volunteers who wanted to help rebuild what the Varaxil had destroyed. The colony was coming back to life, but Linda knew the psychological scars ran deep. "We have a problem," her security chief, Officer Ryan Brooks, announced during the morning briefing. "Some of the survivors want revenge. They're organizing a militia to cross the quarantine border and attack Vraxil civilian targets." Linda felt her stomach tighten. "How many?" 40 survivors. They're saying the quarantine isn't enough. They want blood for blood. They've been stockpiling weapons and modifying a cargo hauler for combat. Intelligence suggests they're planning to launch within the week. This was exactly what Linda had feared. The survivors of New Helena had endured unimaginable trauma. They'd watched their families die. They'd lived through attempted genocide. Now they wanted revenge, and Linda couldn't entirely blame them. But she also knew that if human civilians crossed the border to commit murder, everything Admiral Chen had fought for would collapse. Lieutenant Amy Carter was among the militia organizers. Linda called her in for a private meeting, hoping to talk sense into someone she'd known for years. "Amy, you can't do this," Linda said. "The moment you cross that border and kill Vraxil civilians, you validate everything they said about us. You prove we're the savage, unstable species they feared." Amy's eyes were hollow. "They killed my sister, Governor. She was 12 years old. She died in my arms while Varaxil soldiers hunted us through the ruins. You want me to just forget that? You want me to pretend justice has been served because they're quarantined? I want you to understand that revenge isn't justice. It's just more violence. It won't bring your sister back. It'll just create more orphans, more grieving families, more people who want revenge. Where does it end? It ends when they understand what they did to us." Linda leaned forward. "They do understand." The entire galaxy watched the trial. The Vraxil are pariahs now, banned from civilized space. The economy is collapsing. Their empire is dying. Not because we killed them all, but because we showed the galaxy who they really are. That's a more powerful victory than any revenge raid could achieve. Amy's resolve wavered. Linda pressed her advantage. "You're a Marine, Amy. You fought with honor during the war. Don't become a murderer in peacetime. Don't let grief turn you into the same kind of monster that killed your sister." Meanwhile, on Earth, the political situation was becoming complicated. The victory over the Vraxil had united humanity like never before, but that unity was fraying as different factions argued about what should come next. Senator Marcus Cole led the isolationist faction, arguing that humanity should withdraw from galactic politics and focus on defending its own territory. We've seen what happens when we get involved with alien species. They try to exterminate us. We should seal our borders, build up our defenses, and let the galaxy sort itself out. Senator Jennifer Park represented the expansionist view. The Vraxil tried to stop human expansion because they feared our potential. If we retreat now, we validate their fears and show weakness. We should be expanding faster than ever, claiming new territory, establishing ourselves as a major power before anyone else decides we're a threat. President Victoria Lang tried to find a middle path. We need to be strong enough that no one dares attack us again, but not so aggressive that we create the very threat the Vraxil feared. We need allies, not enemies. The galaxy is watching to see what kind of species humanity truly is. The debate was interrupted by an emergency transmission from Admiral Chen. A Vraxel ship had crossed the quarantine border. But it wasn't a warship. It was a civilian transport carrying a delegation requesting permission to meet with human representatives. The request created chaos in both the Galactic Assembly and human government. The Vraxel were quarantined. Communication was forbidden. Any contact violated the terms of the sanction. But the delegation claimed they had critical information that could prevent another catastrophe. President Lang made the controversial decision to allow the meeting held aboard a neutral space station with Assembly observers present. Commander Paul Davis, now promoted to captain, represented humanity at the meeting. What the Vraxil delegates told him changed everything. The genocide was not sanctioned by our civilian government, the lead delegate, a female Vraxil named Zerathi, explained through a translator. It was orchestrated by a military faction that believed humanity posed an existential threat. Our civilian population knew nothing about the attacks until they were already underway. When we learned the truth, our government collapsed into civil war. The military faction that ordered the genocide has seized control of our homeworld. They're planning another attack. Captain Davis studied the alien delegate carefully. Why should we believe you? Your species tried to exterminate us. For all we know, this is a trick to get us to lower our guard. Zerathi touched a control, and holographic displays filled the room with intelligence data. Ship movements, military communications, deployment schedules. This is everything we know about the military faction's plans. They're building a new fleet in secret shipyards beyond our homeworld. They believe that if they can strike hard enough, fast enough, they can eliminate humanity before the Galactic Assembly can respond. They've learned from their mistakes. This time, they won't target colonies. They're going to target Earth directly. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Assembly delegates demanded verification. Human military officers analyzed the data. And Captain Davis felt cold dread settle in his stomach because the intelligence Zerathi provided was detailed, specific, and terrifyingly credible. If the Vraxil military faction succeeded in building their fleet and launching a surprise attack on Earth, they could kill billions before humanity could respond. The quarantine had contained the legitimate Vraxil government, but hadn't stopped the rogue military elements who'd started the genocide in the first place. Admiral Chen reviewed the intelligence aboard the Ark Royal, her tactical officers confirming what Zerathi had revealed. The Vraxil military faction was building approximately 500 heavy warships in hidden shipyards. They were months away from completion, but once operational, they represented a genuine threat to Earth's defenses. Recommendations? Chen asked her senior staff. Strike now, her tactical officer advised. Send the fleet through the quarantine border and destroy those shipyards before the threat materializes. That would violate the quarantine and undermine the Assembly's authority, her political advisor countered. We'd lose our moral high ground. Chen turned to Captain Davis, who'd returned from the meeting with Zerathi. What's your assessment, Captain? Can we trust these Vraxil dissidents? Davis considered carefully. I think Zerathi is telling the truth. I think there's a civil war happening on the Vraxil homeworld between factions that want peace and factions that still want humanity destroyed. The question is whether we help the peace faction or we use this as justification to invade Vraxil space and eliminate the threat permanently. It was the same question humanity had faced after the initial victory. Revenge or justice? Destruction or reconstruction? The easy path or the right one? Part 5, Admiral Chen made her decision, and it would define humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. Instead of launching an invasion, she proposed something unprecedented: to the Galactic Assembly, a joint operation between human forces and Vraxel dissidents to eliminate the rogue military faction threatening both species. The proposal was met with skepticism from nearly everyone. The Assembly delegates couldn't believe humanity would cooperate with a species that had just tried to exterminate them. Human military officers were horrified at the idea of fighting alongside Vraxel soldiers, and the Vraxel dissidents themselves seemed shocked that humanity would consider anything other than total revenge. But President Lang supported Chen's plan, recognizing the strategic brilliance behind it. If humanity helped moderate Vraxel forces overthrow the extremist military faction, it would accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously. It would eliminate the immediate threat. It would demonstrate that humanity wasn't interested in genocide or conquest. And it would create a debt that would reshape galactic politics for decades. The joint operation launched 3 weeks later. 20 human warships crossed the quarantine border alongside 15 ships crewed by Vraxel dissidents, loyal to Zarathan civilian government. Captain Nina Foster commanded the human contingent, a role she'd accepted with deep reservations. "I don't trust them," she told her first officer as their destroyer entered Vraxel space. "The last time we encountered these aliens, they were trying to kill us all. Now we're supposed to fight alongside them? Orders are orders, Captain. And Admiral Chen doesn't make stupid decisions. If she thinks this is the right move, then we follow her lead." The combined fleet moved toward the hidden shipyards, which were located in an asteroid field far from the Vraxel homeworld. Intelligence from Zarathi's network indicated approximately 200 Vraxel military vessels guarding the shipyards, along with thousands of armed personnel working on the incomplete warships. The battle began with a joint human dissident attack on the perimeter defenses. Nina watched her tactical display carefully, noting how the Vraxel dissident ships fought. Their tactics were cautious, defensive, prioritizing protection of civilian infrastructure over aggressive engagement. They weren't trying to win glory. They were trying to end a war with minimal casualties. It made Nina reconsider her assumptions. These weren't the same Vraxel who'd burned New Helena. These were people who'd risked everything to stop their own government from committing genocide. They were, in their own way, fighting for the same thing humanity was fighting for: the right to exist without fear of extermination. Sergeant Kyle Murphy led the Marine boarding teams tasked with capturing the shipyard facilities intact. This time, his orders were different. Capture when possible, kill only when necessary. Preserve Vraxel lives wherever practical. It went against every instinct Murphy had developed during the war, but he understood the strategic logic. Dead enemies created martyrs. Captured enemies could be turned into witnesses. The shipyard defenses were formidable, but they'd been designed to resist external attack, not internal sabotage combined with military assault. Zarathi's agents had been infiltrating the facilities for weeks, disabling critical systems and gathering intelligence. When Murphy's Marines hit the outer platforms, they encountered surprisingly light resistance. "Something's wrong," Murphy reported to Captain Foster. "These defenses should be stronger. Either the intelligence was bad, or someone's laying a trap." His instincts proved correct. The Vraxel military faction had anticipated betrayal from their own people. As the human and dissident forces pushed deeper into the shipyard complex, automated defense systems activated, sealing blast doors and flooding compartments with lethal atmosphere. Dozens of Marines and dissident soldiers died in the first wave of automated countermeasures. Murphy found himself trapped in a corridor with 6 Marines and 3 Vraxel dissident soldiers. The sealed doors were too thick to blast through, and the atmosphere was being slowly replaced with toxic gas. One of the Vraxile soldiers, a young warrior named Calix, began manipulating the wall controls with desperate speed. "I can override the security protocols," Calix said through his translator, "but it will take time. The gas will kill us first." Murphy made a split-second decision. The Marines' powered armor had internal life support that could filter toxic atmosphere for approximately 30 minutes. The Vraxel armor didn't have the same capability. Murphy and his team sealed their suits and gave their spare oxygen canisters to the Vraxel soldiers, buying them precious minutes while Kellex worked the controls. "Why?" Kellex asked, clearly stunned. "Your people owe us nothing. You could save yourselves and let us die." "Because we're fighting together," Murphy said simply. "That means we all go home alive or none of us do. That's how humans operate." Kellex managed to override the security system, and the combined team escaped the trap. But the gesture hadn't gone unnoticed. Kellex spread the story through the dissident communication network, and it changed the tone of the entire operation. The Vaxil dissidents had been fighting cautiously, half expecting humanity to betray them at the critical moment. Murphy's action proved that humans honored their commitments even when it put them at risk. The battle for the shipyards lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the rogue military faction's fleet. 300 warships destroyed or captured, thousands of extremist Vraxel soldiers killed or imprisoned, and the leadership of the military faction executed by their own people, tried and convicted by Xerithi's provisional government for crimes against galactic civilization. But the real victory came in the aftermath. The Galactic Assembly, witnessing humanity's willingness to cooperate with former enemies and fight for justice rather than revenge, lifted portions of the quarantine. The Vraxel were still restricted from independent action, but they could now engage in supervised trade and limited diplomatic contact. And Xerithi's civilian government, empowered by human support, began the long process of reforming their species' culture and government. Governor Linda Hayes stood on the rebuilt streets of New Helena, addressing a crowd of colonists and survivors. The memorial gardens were complete now, displaying the names of 39,812 humans who died in the genocide. But next to those gardens, construction crews were building something new. Schools, hospitals, homes for families who'd chosen to rebuild rather than abandon the colony. "We didn't respond to genocide with genocide," Linda told the crowd. "We responded with justice. We responded with strength tempered by mercy. We showed the galaxy that humanity can be ruthless in war and generous in peace. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's evolution. That's proof that we've learned from our own bloody history, instead of being doomed to repeat it." Lieutenant Amy Carter stood in the crowd, listening. She'd disbanded her revenge militia weeks ago, convinced by Governor Hayes that there were better ways to honor the dead than creating more corpses. Now she worked as security chief for the rebuilt colony, protecting new families who'd come to start over. Captain Jake Morrison had transferred to the new diplomatic corps, using his combat experience to train peacekeepers for joint human-alien operations. The Galactic Assembly had created a new institution called the Combined Response Force, military units trained to prevent genocide and ethnic cleansing across the galaxy. Humans served alongside representatives from 12 other species, including several Vraxile volunteers who wanted to ensure their species never repeated its mistakes. Admiral Chen retired from active military service and became the Secretary of Interspecies Relations, using her experience to build bridges between humanity and the hundreds of alien species now seeking treaties and trade agreements with Earth. The species that had feared humanity's potential now sought its partnership. The galaxy had learned that humans could be dangerous enemies, but they could also be valuable allies. The Vraxil military faction had tried to eliminate humanity before it became too powerful. Instead, they'd forced humanity to reveal its true nature, not as conquerors, not as genocidal monsters, but as a species that valued both strength and compassion. That could wage total war when necessary but chose peace when possible. that remembered its own bloody history and refused to inflict the same horrors on others. Dr. Helen Grant's biological weapon research had been destroyed, but the knowledge remained. Humanity possessed the capability to exterminate entire species if it chose. The fact that it had chosen not to use such weapons, even against enemies who'd murdered 200 million humans, sent a powerful message across the galaxy. Humanity was strong enough to destroy its enemies, wise enough to choose a better path. And that combination of strength and restraint made it more powerful than any weapon could achieve. The Vraxel had been banned from existence as an independent power, reduced to a supervised protectorate that would take generations to rehabilitate. But they hadn't been exterminated. They'd been given a chance at redemption, an opportunity to evolve beyond their genocidal impulses. Some species in the galaxy viewed this as weakness. Others recognized it as the kind of strength that built civilizations instead of destroying them. 10 years after the genocide, New Helena was a thriving colony again. The population had grown to 100,000, a mix of humans and carefully vetted aliens who'd been invited to live and work alongside humanity. The memorial gardens remained, a permanent reminder of what had been lost and what had been learned. Young students visited the gardens on field trips, learning about the Vaxel genocide and humanity's response. They learned about the war, about the victory, about the choice to build peace instead of taking revenge. And they learned the lesson that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for centuries to come. Strength without wisdom is tyranny. Wisdom without strength is helplessness. But strength and wisdom together, tempered by mercy and guided by justice, that was the foundation of civilization. That was what separated sentient species from mindless beasts. That was what made humanity worthy of its place among the stars. The Vraxil had tried to ban humanity from existing. Instead, they'd given humanity the opportunity to prove it deserved to exist. And humanity had passed that test not through extermination or conquest, but through the hardest choice of all. The choice to be better than its worst impulses. The choice to build rather than destroy. The choice to honor the dead by creating a future worth living for. That was humanity's true power. Not the weapons, not the warships, not the ability to wage total war, but the wisdom to know when to fight and when to show mercy. The strength to win wars and the courage to forge peace. The understanding that survival meant more than just not dying. It meant building something worth surviving for. The galaxy had feared humanity's potential for violence. Now it respected humanity's capacity for justice. And that respect would shape the course of galactic civilization for millennia to come, all because one species chose to respond to genocide not with more genocide, but with the patient, difficult work of building a better future.